Broadcasting from our subterranean studios in beautiful Paradise Valley, Pennsylvania, it's Business and Brain Tumor Talk, a unique show with topics to educate, inspire, and implement. Without further ado, here's your host, Rick Franzo.
Welcome to Business and Brain Tumor Talk, another great episode on tap today. What a pleasure. I say this every time, and it really is a pleasure. We have Jennifer Stank, Stankin Good Design with us today. Good morning.
Good morning, Rick. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you here. So, Jennifer is a young entrepreneur. She's going to tell us about her path to entrepreneurship and what that's looked like so far. But Jen, you specialize in branding. And so something that can kind of fall by the wayside, people put up a logo, or they get their truck or car wrapped or anything else. And, we don't think too much of it. Why is it so important? We're just going to dig right in.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for having me. And it's great that you touched on the brand strategy so early on because I did just want to mention this was not initially my game plan. When I went to college and I went to graphic design, it was kind of a happy accident. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. At age 17, you have guidance counselors asking you what you want to do with your future, and it can be a lot of weight. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do. A lot of my friends were going to be doctors and lawyers and engineers. And I never really felt like any of that was me. That never really felt like something I aligned with, but it was what everybody else was doing. So I got this immense amount of pressure. And at the time in high school, I was really good at art. I loved to paint and draw and use colored pencils. And I was always very crafty. And I get that from my grandmother. And when it came time to decide on my career, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that I was good at art. And when I asked my guidance counselor, they were like, "You're going to be a starving artist in New York City, but there's this field called graphic design, and you can do it on a computer. And there's a lot of jobs in that field." And I was like, "Okay, I don't know what graphic design is, but I'll give it a try." So I ended up going to college. And through my time there, I learned how to design on the computer. I really got to apply that love, that passion of making art in a digital way. And it really was so interesting to learn about and come to terms with how something that was on paper could be translated into a computer and manipulated and built out. And it was really interesting to learn that. So as I went through my time in college, I wanted to graduate with graphic design and web design. I really fell in love with front end development on websites. It was just that kind of took my organizational and systematic brain and just made it so happy with the art, with everything I was doing. So my goal when I graduated is I wanted to be like a designer. And you graduate, you have $80,000 of college debt, and you take whatever job you can get. So, my first job, I actually ended up at a signage facility out in Reading, Pennsylvania. It's L&H Companies. And they did a lot of cool stuff. So, in Reading, they have all these hospitals, Tower Health. That was a huge client of L&H Companies, and they patented the patient care sign was their signature item where you had these interchangeable tabs and a locking mechanism. So, in a signage type way, you can show a patient's specific needs. And I got to spend a lot of time learning about the patient care sign. I did a lot of like social media marketing and advertising for the company. And then right towards the end of my time, I got to dabble in a little bit of signage design. And the reason that I bring this up is because it played directly into what I do today. And I didn't even know that it was going to come full circle. So we'll leave that there for now. Once I knew it was time to move on from that company and kind of get my next job a little bit closer to home, wanted to move home so I could stop paying rent in my Kutztown apartment so I could dump it all into my student loans. And they are paid off, thank God. But I ended up moving my way closer to home so that I could focus on paying off debt. And I ended up at a vehicle wrap place. And this is where I got my knowledge on vehicle wrap design and designing in scale and printing and production and all that kind of fun stuff. And I fell in love with it in ways I did not think possible. At that point, I was like, I don't care about web design anymore. This is where I'm meant to be. And it was kind of a happy accident. So I spent the next couple years in different wrap shops. By that time, I was looking at my dream job, which was Kick Charge Creative. And since I graduated in 2019, I ended up at a wrap shop by 2020 and doing research, kind of looking at what makes a good wrap design successful. You're going to find Kick Charge Creative. They do it so well. And as I started to kind of research this company more, I fell so in love with it. It became like my Disneyland of graphic design jobs. And I threw an application in. COVID shut the world down. They weren't hiring anymore. So I went to another wrap shop in that intermediate time. And then when they were ready to hire again, they reached out and it was so incredible. So I got to go there. And that's where I transitioned for my love of branding because that's what they really specialize in. I got to see brand strategy and really the guts of what it takes to make a brand successful, make a brand sing. And I fell in love with that at my time there. Along this whole journey, I kind of had the business owner itch the whole time. I remember there were times in college where professors would be giving lessons about freelance design, and I was always the kid that would stay after class to ask questions about how can I go into freelance design? What would you recommend? And most of my professors said, you're going to want to spend about 5 years in the industry before you make the jump because there are certain things at jobs that they just teach you about project management, client expectations, that kind of stuff is really tough to learn on your own. It's not impossible, but it's really tough. And I'm very thankful that my professors recommended go spend some time in industry because it really did change the game. Now, with all that being said, I was working my dream job and I still had this business owner itch. And that was really tough for me. That was a moment where I was just really struggling with this mental like back and forth between I have my dream job, but I still want more. I'm still not satisfied. And then I start thinking something was wrong with me. I start thinking that I was broken. How could I have my dream job and still not be happy? And that really
Right.
messed with me. And I took a step back. I really started to confide in family and friends and explain this to them. Like, I feel crazy. And a lot of them said, maybe it's time to go full time in your business. And since 2019, I always freelanced on the side. I did not have a professional LLC. It was just like I was getting paid through PayPal and I had a separate account for my business stuff. So I did freelance on the side the whole time that I worked jobs. And then by the time I start really feeling these feelings of wanting to go on my own, my business had stabilized enough. So that April of 2023 is when I founded my LLC. I stayed at Kick Charge Creative through that entire summer. And my birthday present to myself on October 28th of 2023 was to leave that job and start my business. So I did. And all of the paperwork was ready to go. I had enough clients to keep me fed. And I just jumped into the unknown. And that's where I started to really focus on what does it mean to create a successful brand? What does branding mean? What is brand strategy? Because I had a clear picture of it, but even though I worked at one of the best marketing agencies in the country for brand strategy, there still felt like there were some missing pieces. And again, I was only a vehicle wrap designer there, so I could not see all of the ins and outs. And I remember struggling with these feelings of like, there's got to be more to this. There's got to be more to this picture. And I start doing research. I start buying books. I start looking at people online. I start listening to their YouTube channels and other design podcasts. And I really got a clearer understanding of what brand strategy is. Now, fast forward, let's go back to the L&H. When I worked at that signage company, I really learned a lot about wayfinding signage. And this is really important to me, and I use this in branding today. And not a lot of brand strategists kind of look at it this way. So when I worked at that signage company, we studied a lot about wayfinding signage. And if you boil wayfinding signage down, it's just where are you? Where are you looking to go? And how do you get there? So it's something as simple as the little mall maps where it says you are here and you're looking for a certain store and it'll show you how to get there. Or grocery stores are also a great place for wayfinding signage, airports, hospitals, anything that's a really large space that people may have a hard time navigating. You're going to find wayfinding signage, gate A, B, C, aisle 1, 2, 3. This is the baking aisle. This is the condiments, whatever it is. And as I was facing these feelings of feeling like something was missing with brand strategy, feeling like there was more to this picture. These echoes of wayfinding signage started to echo in my head. And I was like, wait a second. I knew wayfinding in a physical sense, but to me, it seems like branding is wayfinding in a digital sense. And once I put those two pieces of this puzzle together, it made sense to me. It made sense in my brain. I no longer felt like I was missing something when it comes to brand strategy. And I understood really quickly how wayfinding, signage, and brand strategy mirror each other almost perfectly. So when somebody finds you on your website and they want to work with you, how do they get there? When somebody finds you on social media, do you want them to go to your website? Do you want them to go somewhere else? Do you want to get them on a newsletter? When somebody sees your vehicle wrap driving, do you want them to call your phone number? Do you want them to go to your website? These things really start turning together as a cohesive system. And once I paired that together, it was just like game over. I became so obsessed with my job. I became so obsessed with my industry. And I became so obsessed with helping other clients succeed, be the best versions of themselves, feel confident in their branding, understand how to use it as a communication tool. And it just drives success like you would not believe. So that's a little bit of a backstory on me.
Just a little bit in 10 minutes or so. That's a little bit of a backstory. So, wow, wow. Great education, great backstory, family support. Just a couple of things. It's kind of the script is flipped a little bit. Most people don't have the support of their families. They'd rather somebody in their family play it safe, stay at a job, retire, get the gold watch or the rocking chair, uh, play some golf or mahjong. I don't know how to play mahjong, but I think that older people play mahjong, and then maybe not if you're younger and you play mahjong. Hey, whatever. But then you had great family support, which I think was important. Something you said: do you have a job or do you have a business?
So I have a business. I do not work in my business. I work on my business.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it as a business coach. That's perfect, right? So, we tend because we do we have the challenges of the day. We're still doing the heavy lifting, but we have businesses, not jobs. How do you make a brand sing? So you said that a couple of times, and so we have. I know that we have 5 to 7 seconds to get the attention of the average adult. For me, probably a lot less. So therein the challenge lies. But when we're speaking with them or they're looking at a visual, that's it. So what is it? What is in a logo? What is in there? I'm not going to ask you the whole brand strategy, although I've seen your process and it's super impressive. But when you're looking at a logo, right, or you want to have those calls to action. So you want somebody to call, you want to go to a landing page, you want them to call you or whatever. What are some of the things that you and a potential client go over specifically, color wise, uh, image wise, otherwise? Take us through that if you don't mind.
Absolutely, I would love to. So, there's actually a couple different facets that help make a brand sing, for lack of a better term. So, there's a couple things going on. The first and the most important thing is going to be the name. If someone cannot remember your business name with seeing it with a flash of a second, you've already fallen short. If you have, Jones and Sons and Cousins and Brothers Roofing, no one's really going to remember that. But if you have Roofing Army, somebody's going to remember that. So I always advise myself, or I always advise my clients to be really careful about using their personal name in their business unless it makes sense. Now, a really good example is my one design friend over in the UK. Her last name is Moore, Moore. So she made her business Design Some More with her last name. And
Sure.
that's really, really good. And for me, my last name is Stank. So I ended up using Stankin Good Design. My last name is in there, but the name is its own entity. It's not Jones and Sons and Brothers Roofing. So I always advise my clients to be really careful with your name. You're going to want to pick something that's memorable, something short and sweet, something that isn't going to be mistaken. You don't want something that's like Plumbers and Co., that there's 1,000 Plumbers and Co. in the entire United States. You want something unique to you. So when they Google it, they're not getting confused with somebody else. So that's going to be the first thing. Another thing is in the visuals themselves, you're going to want to look at a competitive analysis. So I always look at other competitive like companies in the area. Not that competition is really even a thing anymore, but there's enough food on the table for everybody. But competitive analysis in the sense of what other companies are around you that are offering a similar service, and are you seeing a sea of sameness within them? So, for example, if you have a ton of other companies around you that are heating and cooling and they're all using blue and red, maybe we go with something that's like purple and yellow or orange and green. That little bit of disruption in the color is going to help differentiate you as a company, because now you're stepping outside of that oversaturated market from a visual standpoint. Another thing to bounce off of that disruption is anytime that you can introduce cognitive dissonance into your visual identity, it's never going to serve you wrong. So, what I mean by that when it comes to cognitive dissonance is doing something that's a little bit out of the box that kind of makes people stop and think like, wait, did I just see that right? And when that happens, it's a very known thing in the psychological world where if you can create cognitive dissonance, like an ant riding an elephant, and it makes people think like, I've never seen that before, or did I just see that right? It ingrains it in their memory and it makes it sticky. So if there's anything that you can kind of do to make something cognitively dissonant, like the one company that I did, Ham's Lawn Care out in Michigan, we did this adorable pig mascot, and he was like a doctor with a stethoscope because we were approaching this lawn doctor idea, but we used a pig mascot to pair with the name Hams and created that little bit of a cognitive dissonance. Like, is that a doctor pig? And it really sticks with people. And the other company that I worked with, Roofing Army, we did an army ant character. And instead of carrying a traditional ladder on his back, I made the unique decision to make it out of twigs and sticks. And it's tied together with little grass blades because that makes it seem more real. That's something that an ant would put together. They're not going to use a regular ladder. And it makes people stop and think, like, is that a twig ladder? Is that an ant carrying a twig ladder with an army hat and boots? And the response, because I actually just had that client on my podcast a couple weeks ago, the response in the community was astronomical. He said, I can't tell you how many times I have the van parked outside of a job site and people are walking in the neighborhood, dads and moms and kids, and they're pointing and smiling and running up to the van to take pictures. That is huge to help you stand out in your market. So to really make that brand sing, it's multifaceted. There's a lot of things that you're going to want to look at. You're going to want to have a cohesive competitive analysis, hyper focus on your name, make sure that your URL matches. You never want it to be where your company name is one thing and your URL is different. You really want to march towards consistency because consistency helps people feel safe. The cognitive dissonance helps them to remember you, and your name helps with the recollection to get them onto your pages, whether it's your Google page or your website or whatever it is. And when they start kind of working together, you get this really, really strong brand where people like Roofing Army launched their brand a year ago. And he's had people say, oh my gosh, I've seen you guys around for the last 10 years because their brand presence is so strong. So that's really what it takes.
So that's the wow factor that we always talk about, right? It really hits. I love that. Thank you so much for the explanation. It's how do you make it memorable? How do you make it sticky? Things like that. And what sets you apart from your competition. So that was really a great explanation. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about you. Tell us about yourself. We started right with the branding because I'm so excited about what it is that you do. So, talk about yourself for a second, if you can. That's hard for some people. A little bit of your background. We are broadcasting. Our underground studios are here in northeastern Pennsylvania in the Poconos. And so Jen is from this general area. Not all my guests are from the Poconos. We do this worldwide. But yeah, Jen, tell us about your upbringing and things, whatever you want to share with us.
Oh, absolutely. So I am a weirdo. I'll be the first to admit it, and I own it, and I wear it like a badge of honor. My upbringing was a little different because I had the privilege to watch two parents work their butts off for their dream and achieve it. So both of my parents were factory workers. Like when there was the 1980s warehouse boom and interstates got huge and the trucking industry exploded, there was a hub up in Hazleton, Humboldt. It was the Humboldt,
Mhm.
like, because it's right where 80 and 81 intersect. So that's where a lot of warehouses popped up. And my dad is from Hazleton. My mom was from Beaver Meadows. And they ended up meeting and deciding, they wanted a future together. They met through playing pool, which I actually ended up taking up in
Nice.
college. And
Nice.
that's how they met. So they ended up, getting into these factory jobs and they were making $13 an hour the entire time. There wasn't really any raises. You would get a quarter raise here or a quarter raise there. It wasn't really a field where you can experience a lot of growth in, but it was something that was reliable and consistent, and that's what they wanted. And they were proud of it. They never were embarrassed about being factory workers. They always were proud of it. They showed me from a very young age to never be embarrassed about anything you do. If it means something to you and you're doing it for a purpose, to embrace it and be proud of it. So I got to see that through a child's eyes, and that was really, really fundamental in helping shape my growth. So they ended up working at these factories. My mom, it was anytime between 2 and 3 jobs at times she would work to try to achieve this dream that they wanted to build a house. And at the time, when they fresh got married, I think it was like 1992 or 1993, everybody laughed at them. They had factory jobs and they wanted to build a house, and everybody laughed at them. They said they were crazy. They said they were never going to do it. And that just lit a fire under my mom's ass that nobody could put out. So they ended up doing their thing. My dad was really good with finances. I mean, really good with finances. He was able to take the little bit that they had and transform it into something truly incredible, from the way that he handled paying credit cards and splitting the balance. So if he didn't want to spend everything at one go to pay off a balance, he'd carry some of it over, but he'd always make the statement so he was never paying interest, and very smart and savvy when it came to money. And my mom just was the work ethic. My dad was the finance and the numbers guy. My mom had the work ethic, and together they were truly just a powerhouse. So they ended up building their home. It was $170,000 when it was all said and done, on a $28,000 annual salary between the two of them. And
Wow.
truly, it was incredible. Right to the year before I left for college, they paid the house off. And it was part of the plan, because when the oldest child, who is me, started to get ready for college, they wanted to be able to help me with that. And my dad told me, and I'm so thankful for this, when I started my college education, he said, if you keep your grades up, you keep them, above a certain level, I'll pay all your interest on your loans through the whole 4 years that you're there, if you keep your grades above a
Wow.
certain level. So it gave me initiative to try really hard. And he was also helping me monumentally by helping pay my loans as I went. So it was kind of a win-win for the both of us. And that kind of spiraled into like my childhood growing up. I had my parents worked all the time. That really was tough, but I understood why it was that way, and I understood what they were trying to achieve and eventually leave to us someday. That was really their goal, is we don't want our kids to work as hard as we had to. We want to be able to leave this for them and be able to give them a good running start and help with, college loans and things like that. So as I grew up, it was kind of just me and my sister on this monstrous property. We have 3 acres in the middle of nowhere. We're in Weatherly, technically, Weatherly,
Mhm.
Pennsylvania. But it's this little valley outside, like right outside Beaver Meadows, between like Beaver Meadows and Weatherly. And growing up, our neighbors were cows, like we really didn't have that typical live in town, go to the playground every day. You walk outside your door and there's 10 friends around you. You could ride your bikes around and go to the pizzeria. We really didn't have that. So as a child, I grew up playing with sticks and, watering the garden and running around in the yard and making animals out of the clouds. Like, it was a very imaginative childhood because of the nature of things. And I attribute a lot of my creativity to that today. So as I grew up and I went to college and everything like that, I had some weird passions in high school. Again, I loved art. I'm a big video game nerd. I love games. I played Skyrim since I'm 16 years old and I still play it to this
Okay.
day. Big gamer nerd. I loved working puzzles. Like, oh my gosh, if you gave me 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, I was good all week. So I really had this knack for just problem solving and puzzle working and video games. And I think there's a lot of puzzles within video games. So I always had this curious organizational type of upbringing, and I use it to this day. Like, I use that in my full-time job. I was really into flying kites. I was really into rollerblading. I was really into a lot of these like weird quirky hobbies. And then as I got into college, I still rollerbladed. I actually took my rollerblades up to campus and we would rollerblade around, and I start shooting pool. So in college, I learned about my parents meeting, and my dad had a professional pool stick. My mom had a professional pool stick. And I started to gain an interest because when I went to the dorm in college, my whole family came with me. It's drop off day. We all went down, we packed the family vehicle, we had all of my totes and boxes, and we were going into the dorm and, setting my room up. And in the recreational area downstairs, because in the dormitory, they had like a little kitchen downstairs that you could use, they had
Sure.
recreation area, and there was a pool table. And my dad was like, "Oh, that's so cool. Are you gonna use it?" And that turned into, in between homework or when I just needed to blow off steam, I got a cheap pool stick because I didn't wanna take my parents' super nice ones. I got a really cheap pool stick, and I'd go down and play pool on this little, like, beat up pool table in the dormitory, and I fell in love with it. I was like, "I really like this game." And then they opened the Cub Cafe, or no, it was South Dining Hall, but they renovated the downstairs and they got nice pool tables there. So what I used to do is I would go to the dining hall and I'd start running games and have guys buy me dinner because that was an easy way to get dinner bought for me. So I started
Oh, what
I
a pool shark for that. Look at this. Look at this.
yeah,
That
I
is
was like,
that
I
is
don't
fantastic.
I was like,
That
"I don't
that's
care
so
about
cool.
drinks, get me some food." So, I
Yeah, get me
start
some
getting
food.
really I got really good at it, and I was like, "Man, this is cool," and I enjoy it, and I'm starting to get, like, good at it to the point where it was like, I'd walk up to the table and everybody would just start to scatter because they knew better.
Yeah, they didn't want to buy you. Do you want a drink? I don't know. How about some mozzarella sticks, right? So
Yep,
that's
exactly.
so funny. As we wrap up, three strategies or just advice for other people that are looking to think about starting their own business. You're an amazing young entrepreneur. What would you say to somebody that comes up to you, Jen, and says, I'm thinking about starting my own business? What are three things that you would say that I should really focus on or, keep top of mind?
Trust your gut. Trust your gut. I think there was a lot of times in my career where my gut feeling was telling me something wasn't wrong or something wasn't right. And I listened to the advice of other people around me, and I didn't trust myself enough. And I was like, maybe I'm just crazy. And I got into something that necessarily wasn't the best thing for me, or vice versa. You know, thinking something was really good when maybe it necessarily wasn't. So trust your gut. It's rarely
Trust your gut.
wrong. Yes,
Yeah,
trust
trust your gut. So
trust your
that's
gut,
one.
and
What are a couple other ones?
don't take advice from other people that don't run businesses, or take it with a grain of salt, because a lot of times when you don't really have a super great support system for other business owners in your family and friends, they love you dearly, but they do not know what it takes to run a business. Always make
No.
sure that when you are seeking advice, you're seeking it from a professional that's done it for a really long time and got beat up, and they have the scars to show for it. And if you're going to go with advice from anyone, definitely make sure it's somebody that's versed in the industry.
Yep.
Um,
One
and
more.
then I would say find your purpose. Find your
Yeah.
purpose, because
Yeah.
if you're just doing it to make money or you're just doing it for fame, you're going to fail. You got to find that purpose that puts everything else, it's like tunnel vision. When you find your purpose, like, I truly am out here to help people grow and thrive and be the best version of themselves. The money is a bonus. The internet fame is a bonus, but I am here to truly help people feel confident in their business, help them feel like they can embrace something and be a part of something bigger than themselves. So find your purpose, make sure that you're doing it for something a lot deeper than just the surface level things.
So the three things, trust your gut, pair up with somebody, take advice not just from anybody, but people that have gotten their asses kicked, right? They got the scars to prove that they've been through the battles, right? And find your purpose. Perfect. Perfect. How can people get in touch with you, Jen, and Stankin Good Design?
Absolutely. You can find me anywhere online pretty much at Stankin Good Design. My handle on Instagram is stankingood.design. And that's my website too. It's www.stankingood.design. It's not a .com, it's .design. So that's pretty much the best place you can find me on my website. There's places where you can fill out contact forms, or there's a work with me button that will take you to a form. Like I said, I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, pretty much everywhere. And I also have a podcast called The Designated Designer. So I'm on YouTube, Apple, Amazon, and Spotify. So I also have a podcast and I talk about a lot of fun stuff. So you can find me there too.
And I'm going to be on that, so we're going to be talking about a lot of fun stuff when I'm on there.
Absolutely. I cannot wait.
This was an absolute pleasure. Jen, thank you so much for joining us today. Jen from Stankin Good Design. Her last name is Stankin Good Design. So it's Jennifer Stank, Stankin Good Design. Jen, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story and your insights. Super valuable. And this has been Business and Brain Tumor Talk. And we'll see you next time. Stay gold and peace.